My front door rattled under heavy fists, jolting me awake. Two strangers stood outside in cheap uniforms, their badges glaring HOA police. They demanded entry, claiming my home broke community rules. But what they didn't know, I'm an FBI agent and they'd picked the wrong house. When I first moved into the neighborhood, I thought I had finally found peace. A quiet suburb, tree-lined streets, kids riding bikes, the smell of fresh-cut grass drifting on lazy afternoons. It was everything I'd wanted after years of high-pressure assignments at the bureau. A place where I could breathe. The neighbors waved politely as I unpacked boxes. Families strolled with their dogs. Couples tended flower beds. And for the first time in a long time, I felt something close to normal. My house wasn't the biggest on the block, but it was Mina, a safe place where I thought trouble wouldn't find me. Then came Karen. She introduced herself on day 2. Strutting across the street in a bright pink suit jacket, clipboard clutched like a weapon. "Welcome," she said, flashing a smile that never touched her eyes. Her voice carried a sharpness, as if every word was dipped in authority. She wasn't just a neighbor, she was a self-appointed overseer. At first I brushed it off. Every neighborhood has one of those people, right? The type who complains about trash cans left out too long or lawns growing an inch too high. But Karen wasn't just nosy. She was territorial, like she owned the whole block. She pointed at my driveway, warning me about parking alignment rules. She gestured at my garden, muttering about approved plant colors. I half laughed, thinking it was just her being dramatic. Still, a chill ran down my spine. Because even then, before the fake cops and phony fines, I could see it in her eyes. Karen didn't just want order, she wanted control. And though I didn't know it yet, she was about to drag me into the strangest, most dangerous neighborhood war I'd ever faced. It was just after sunrise when the pounding began. Bang, bang, bang. The sound echoed through my hallway, rattling picture frames on the wall. For a second, still half asleep, I thought it was an emergency. Maybe a neighbor in trouble, maybe kids pulling a dumb prank. But when I peered through the peephole, my stomach clenched. Two strangers stood on my porch. Both wore matching dark uniforms with shiny letters that read HOA Police. Their stances were stiff, their faces sharp with authority, or at least the act of it. But even through the peephole, I could see something was off. Their badges looked cheap, like something bought online. Their belts sagged under plastic gear that didn't match any official issue. I cracked the door open. "Can I help you?" The taller man stepped forward, jaw tight. "We're here on official business. You have multiple violations on your property. We need access to your garage immediately." I blinked, fighting back a laugh. Violations. What violations? The woman beside him narrowed her eyes. "Don't make this difficult. We have authority from the HOA. Authority. From the HOA? My pulse ticked faster, but not from fear from recognition. This wasn't law enforcement. This was theater. And then, as if to confirm my suspicion, I spotted her, Karen. She stood behind them, arms folded, lips curled into a smug little smile. She tilted her head like a queen overseeing her guards. My gut twisted. Of course she was behind this. "Karen," I said slowly, stepping out onto the porch. "What's going on here?" She clasped her hands innocently. "Oh, I'm just making sure the rules are followed. You don't get special treatment just because of your job." Her words landed like a challenge. My job. She had no idea what that really meant. I turned back to the so-called officers. "You got a warrant?" The man smirked. "Being FBI doesn't excuse you from neighborhood codes." My jaw clenched. They knew. Or at least they thought they knew. The woman pulled out a folded paper, shaking it in my face. "This is an order for inspection." I snatched it. No seal, no signature, just typed lines about violations and suspicious activity. My patience thinned. "This isn't official. You have no legal right to be here." Karen stepped closer, her perfume sharp in the morning air. "You really want to argue? I can add your refusal to the list." I stared at her, forcing calm into my voice. "Since when does the HOA send police?" The taller officer dangled a pair of plastic zip ties. "Step aside, or we'll enforce compliance." For a split second, I imagined how easy it would be to disarm both of them, but I knew better. This wasn't a fight, they wanted a reaction. A setup. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I glanced at the screen. My boss's name lit up, urgent. I exhaled sharply, keeping my eyes on them. "One moment," I said. The man sneered. "We're not done here." But as I answered the call, my boss's strained voice cut through. "Get to the office right now. We've got a problem." And suddenly, I realized this was bigger than just Karen's morning stunt. The man's sneer widened as I lowered the phone. "We don't like being ignored," he said, shaking those cheap plastic cuffs in my face like they were proof of power. "Put those down," I said, my voice cold. "Impersonating a law officer is a crime. Do you understand that?" The woman officer lifted a plastic-looking badge and shoved it close to my eyes. "We have new authority now. The HOA police answers to nobody but the board." The board. I almost laughed. The real HOA board had no such program. And yet, here they were playing dress-up cops on my porch like it was their stage. Karen stepped closer. Her arms folded tight. "Don't think your job makes you untouchable. Everyone knows you think you're above the rules. Well, not here." I could feel my jaw tighten. Every nerve screamed at me to shut this down hard, but I had to be smart. This wasn't just about me anymore. Karen was putting on a show for the whole block. I spotted movement out of the corner of my eye curtains, shifting. Neighbors peeking out. She wanted witnesses. She wanted them to see me resist. She wanted to twist the story. I forced my hands into my pockets. Calm on the outside, though. My pulse thundered. "Unless you come back with real law enforcement and a valid warrant, you're not stepping inside my home." The man's nostrils flared. "Don't test us." I leaned forward just enough to meet his stare. "Try me." The air between us was heavy, tight, like the crackle before a storm. And that's when Karen smirked, like she'd already won. "Fine," she said smoothly, "but refusal will be noted. We'll escalate this." The woman officer pulled out her phone and snapped a picture of me. "Smile for the record," she hissed. My stomach churned. This wasn't random. They were documenting me, building a paper trail of lies. And if Karen had neighbors convinced, those lies could travel fast. "Get off my porch," I said low and sharp. The tall man stepped closer, his boots scraping my welcome mat. For a split second, I thought he'd force his way inside. My fists curled, the instincts of years of training ready to kick in. But I held, because deep down, I knew this was bait. They wanted me to snap. They wanted the FBI agent to lose his cool so they could paint me as unstable. I stepped back, letting the morning light spill across the doorway. "I don't need to prove myself to you. I have real work to do." Karen tilted her head, feigning sympathy. "Oh, running away already? What will the neighbors think?" I shut the door. Hard on the other side, their muffled voices still carried. "Mark him uncooperative. He'll regret this. We'll make it official." I leaned against the wall, chest heaving, the weight of the situation pressing down. This wasn't just harassment anymore. This was a coordinated attempt to corner me. And the worst part, they weren't bluffing. My phone buzzed again, a new message from my boss. "Hurry, don't be late." I grabbed my keys, forcing down the surge of anger still boiling inside me. If Karen thought she could trap me with her phony cops, she was dead wrong. But something told me this wasn't the end of her little game, it was just the opening move. And I had no idea how deep the board really went. By the time I reached the field office, my pulse hadn't slowed. The fake cop's threat still echoed in my head, but what waited at work rattled me even more. The lobby felt colder than usual, eyes shifting toward me as I walked through the security checkpoint. Normally I was greeted with nods, a quick joke, maybe even respect. But today the air was different, tight, uneasy. Whispers floated just out of earshot. My boss stood waiting in the hallway, arms folded, his face carved into stone. In my office, now, I followed him inside, closing the door behind me. The silence hit harder than any lecture. Finally, he turned. Do you want to tell me why I'm getting complaints about you threatening local authorities? The words landed like a punch. Threatening, sir? Those weren't authorities. They were imposters. Karen, my neighbor, hired some private security clowns to play dress-up as HOA police. He held up a file. A thick one. Imposters or not, I've got reports on my desk. Reports claiming you refused inspection. Reports claiming you raised your voice, that you intimidated them. And it's not just one, multiple signed statements from your neighborhood. My throat went dry. Signed statements? Of course. Karen was pulling strings again. I never threatened anyone, I said firmly. They tried to force entry into my house with fake badges. I stopped them. That's it. He stared at me for a long moment, jaw tight. I believe you. But the higher-ups don't care about belief. They care about optics. You've got a target on your back now. And if this escalates, I can't protect you. The weight of his words pressed down on me. Years of service, hundreds of cases, all hanging by a thread because of a neighbor with a clipboard and a grudge. My boss leaned forward. Listen, keep your cool. Don't give them ammunition. Prove they're fakes, and maybe we can put this to bed. But if one more complaint hits my desk, he shook his head, you'll be facing internal affairs. I swallowed hard, a bitter taste in my mouth. Internal affairs. That wasn't just paperwork, that was career suicide. He dismissed me with a wave, but his voice followed me out. Watch yourself, agent. You're on thin ice. Walking back through the office, I could feel the shift in the air again. Colleagues who once greeted me with trust now looked away. Theirs whispered openly. Karen hadn't just sent fake cops to my door, she had followed me here. She was dismantling my life piece by piece, and she wasn't even subtle about it. And I knew as I gripped my badge in my pocket that this battle wasn't going to stay on my street, was bleeding into my career, and if I wasn't careful, I was going to lose both. By the time I pulled back into the neighborhood, the sun had climbed high. The houses looked the same, perfect lawns, trimmed hedges. Kids' bikes scattered on driveways, but something had shifted. People who once waved now looked away. Curtains twitched. Conversations hushed when I walked past. Karen's poison was working. I barely made it up my porch steps before I noticed something tucked under my welcome mat. A notice. Bold letters screamed violation warning. My stomach dropped as I skimmed the lines. Apparently, I had been cited for unapproved lawn accessories. Lawn accessories? I had a garden gnome my sister gave me years ago. That was the crime? I crumpled the paper, fury spiking. It was fake. I knew it. But to the neighbors, it probably looked real. As if on cue, I heard a voice call from across the street. Mrs. Miller. A woman I'd only spoken to twice, stood with her arms crossed, glaring at me. You really should just follow the rules, she said, loud enough for others to hear. It would make things easier for everyone. Her words stung more than I wanted to admit. Easier. That's what Karen wanted, compliance, not truth. That evening, my phone buzzed. It was Tamara, one of the few neighbors who still treated me like a human being. Can I come over? She asked, her voice shaky. Minutes later, she stood in my living room, clutching a piece of paper, like it was evidence. They left this on my porch, she whispered, eyes wide. I took it from her hands. Another violation notice, this time for unapproved paint color. Tamara's house was painted a pale blue, nothing unusual, nothing offensive. But the notice demanded she pay a fine or face eviction proceedings. My jaw tightened. Don't pay them. This is a scam, her eyes watered. But what if it's real? What if I lose my house? I can't take that risk. I wanted to promise her it was all smoke and mirrors. But the truth? Karen had built such a convincing facade, even I was beginning to feel trapped. Later that night, I stepped out to grab the mail. That's when I saw it. A black SUV sat idling at the end of the block, its tinted windows reflecting the glow of the streetlights. No HOA stickers, no police markings, just a shadow with an engine. My instincts screamed danger. Years of fieldwork had trained me to notice tails, surveillance, the subtle hum of being watched. I stared at the SUV for a long moment, waiting for movement. Nothing. Just silence. I went back inside, but the unease clung to me like a second skin. The next morning, I found another notice taped to my door. This one accused me of suspicious nighttime activity. I let out a bitter laugh. Of course. Karen had been watching me, twisting late-night phone calls and long work hours into something sinister. The worst part? Neighbors believed it. At the grocery store, a father who once shook my hand now steered his kid away from me. An older couple whispered as I walked past, their eyes sharp with judgment. Karen was winning. She wasn't just sending fake cops to my door anymore. She was turning the whole neighborhood into a jury. And in their court, I was already guilty. That night, I sat by the window, lights off, watching the street. The fake HOA cruiser rolled by slowly, headlights dim like it was marking territory. A shadow shifted behind Karen's curtains, her silhouette sharp against the glow of her lamp. She was watching me. Always watching, and then my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Better watch your step. We know who you are. My chest tightened, a mix of anger and dread swirling inside me. Karen had escalated her game. This wasn't just about fake fines anymore. This was about breaking me at home, at work, everywhere. And if I didn't find a way to fight back soon, she might succeed. By the end of the week, Karen wasn't just watching me, she was recruiting. Flyers started showing up in mailboxes, printed on thick paper with a counterfeit HOA seal. Protect our neighborhood, the heading read. Below it, a call for volunteers to join the new HOA police, complete with a membership fee to cover uniforms and administrative costs. I held one in my hands, disbelief simmering into rage. She wasn't even hiding it anymore. She was building an army. That night, I took a walk around the block, pretending to check my mailbox just to see how neighbors were reacting. To my horror, a handful of houses already had new yard signs stuck in the ground. We support the HOA police. Every sign felt like a knife. Karen was winning hearts and minds with the illusion of authority. And the more people fell in line, the more dangerous her scheme became. Later, I saw her standing in her driveway, clipboard in hand. Addressing a small group of neighbors, two of her so-called officers flanked her like bodyguards. Her voice carried down the street. This is about safety, about order. We can't have people ignoring community rules. We have to protect property values. Applause followed. Not thunderous, but enough to make my skin crawl. I stepped closer, unable to stop myself. You're not protecting anyone, Karen. You're scamming them. Her eyes lit up, almost pleased I had spoken. Oh, look who it is, the agent who thinks he's above the law. Neighbors, you see? Even now, he refuses to cooperate. Crowd's murmurs rippled. Some glared at me. Others looked away, uncomfortable. Karen thrived in that moment, feeding off their fear. I clenched my fists, forcing calm into my tone. These citations, these uniforms, this entire program, it's fake. None of it has legal standing. Karen's smile widened. Fake? Or just new? Change frightens people, doesn't it? But I'm not afraid to lead when others won't. The shorter officer puffed out his chest. Step aside, sir. You're disrupting an official meeting. I almost laughed. Official? With plastic badges and clipboards? You're criminals. Karen tilted her head, her voice dropping low enough that only I could hear. Careful, agent. Every word you say is being noted. One wrong step, and you'll lose more than your house. You'll lose that shiny career of yours. Her words sank deep. She knew exactly where to hit. Later that night, I sat at my dining table. Papers scattered across the surface, bogus citations, photos of the fake cruiser, copies of her flyers. I was building a case, brick by brick. But it felt like trying to fight a wildfire with a garden hose. Because Karen didn't just want to find people or boss them around. She wanted to own the neighborhood. And worse, she had backup. Whoever sat in that black SUV. Whoever was sending those anonymous texts. This was no longer a petty power trip. This was an organized campaign, and I was the only one standing in her way. The next morning, I decided to stop reacting and start digging. If Karen wanted to play cop, I'd treat her like a suspect. I called Alvarez, a local police contact I trusted. I need a favor, I told him. Run a plate for me. Black SUV, tinted windows, been circling my block, sighed. What are we looking at? Impersonators, cops. Bogus HOA authority. They're harassing me and my neighbors. Alvarez chuckled dryly. Never thought I'd hear you calling about HOA trouble. Text me the plate number. I'll see what I can do. Hours later, he called back. It belongs to a private security outfit. But here's the kicker. There's no record of them being contracted by your HOA. None. They're freelancing. Relief flared for a moment. Proof, but it faded just as fast. Without neighbors willing to testify, it was still just my word against theirs. Meanwhile, the bureau wasn't letting up. I walked into the office the next day to find a memo on my desk. Report to Internal Affairs. Immediate, my gut twisted. The meeting room was small, cold and clinical. Across the table sat a steely-eyed woman flipping through a thick folder. Agent, she began, her tone clipped. We've received multiple complaints regarding your behavior with local authorities. Reports of hostility, intimidation, resistance to inspection. I leaned forward, my voice steady. With respect, ma'am, those weren't authorities. They were private security impersonating law enforcement. I've collected bogus citations. I have flyers, even a license plate tied to the company. She tapped her pen against the file. Do you have neighbor statements? Witnesses? I hesitated. That pause was all she needed. No witnesses. Just documents. Her eyebrow arched. Documents can be faked, Agent. Statements carry weight. My chest tightened. My neighbors are scared. Karen's got them under her thumb. They won't speak. The woman scribbled a note, then closed the file with a snap. Until you provide concrete evidence and corroborating testimony, this remains an active review. Tread carefully. Walking out, I felt the walls closing in. At home, Karen's fake cops were circling. At work, Internal Affairs was circling. And I was standing in the middle. With nothing solid to defend myself, that night I sat at my desk, staring at the pile of evidence that meant everything to me, but nothing to the people who could stop this. My phone buzzed. A new message. You're running out of time. Cooperate or lose everything. I set the phone down slowly, realizing the truth. This wasn't just harassment anymore. It was a countdown. The note appeared in my mailbox one morning. No signature, just for words. Meeting tonight. Be there. At first, I almost tossed it. A trap, no doubt. But then I thought of Tamara, of the neighbors too scared to speak, of Alvarez asking for witnesses. If this meeting was real, it might be my only chance to blow Karen's scheme wide open, so I went. The community center was packed. Folding chairs lined the room, every neighbor crammed inside. At the front, a makeshift podium stood beneath a banner that read, Neighborhood Safety Meeting. And right there, glowing in the fluorescent lights, was Karen. She wore a sleek suit this time, clipboard replaced by a leather folder. Two of her fake HOA officers stood on either side of her like bodyguards, arms crossed, eyes sweeping the crowd. Good evening, everyone, Karen began, her voice rich with false warmth. Thank you for coming. As you know, our community has faced challenges, noise, violations, safety concerns. That's why I took the initiative to establish the HOA police. We've already issued several citations and restored order. Applause broke out from the front row. From the back, I saw skeptical faces, but fear kept them silent. Karen flipped a page in her folder. Unfortunately, not everyone respects these standards. One individual has resisted, mocked our rules, and endangered the peace we've built. Her eyes flicked toward me. A ripple of murmurs spread through the crowd. I stood. My chair scraped loudly against the floor, cutting through the whispers. That's a lie, I said, projecting my voice. There's nothing legitimate about your so-called police. They're private security with no contract, no legal authority, and no right to fine or threaten anyone here. Gasps rippled. Karen's smile faltered for a heartbeat before returning, wider than ever. There he is, neighbors. the man who refuses to cooperate. Notice how quick he is to cause a scene. The shorter officer stepped toward me, but I held up my badge. Federal agent, touch me, and you'll regret it. Some neighbors leaned forward, eyes wide. Others shrank back, unsure who to believe. I pulled out my phone, scrolling to the photos Alvarez had sent me. This is proof. The so-called HOA police car belongs to an unlicensed security company. They're not sanctioned by the HOA. They're not sanctioned by the city. They're imposters. A man in the second row frowned. Karen, is that true? Karen's cheeks flushed. Don't be fooled. He's twisting things because he doesn't want to follow rules. Rules? I shot back. Or scams. Tell us, Karen, where's the money from these fines going? Because I guarantee it's not the HOA. All at once, eyes turned toward her. Neighbors shifted uncomfortably. Someone whispered, "Where is the money going?" One of the fake officers moved to snatch papers off the podium, but a neighbor was quicker. He held a citation high for everyone to see. This doesn't look right. No seal. No board member signature. Others surged forward, grabbing more papers. Phones flashed as people snapped photos. Karen's mask cracked, her voice rising sharp with panic. That's confidential. You have no right, but the damage was done. The crowd was no longer silent. Voices rose, demanding answers, shouts mixing with confusion. And then, like a ripple in the storm, one of the fake officers muttered, "I didn't sign up for this." Before bolting for the door, Karen froze. Her empire was crumbling right in front of her, and for the first time, saw something in her eyes that had never been there before. Fear. The room boiled with voices, neighbors shouting questions, waving fake citations in the air, snapping photos of the bogus paperwork. Karen tried to hold her ground, but the smug smile was gone. Her hands trembled as she snatched at papers, shouting, "Stop. This meeting is under HOA authority." "No, it isn't." I roared, cutting through the noise. "You have no authority here. Everything you've done is a scam, Karen. You've bullied this neighborhood long enough." The taller fake officer shoved forward, his jaw tight. "Enough. Sit down before you're removed." He reached for the zip ties at his belt. I squared my shoulders. "Go ahead. Impersonating a law officer is a federal crime. Do you really want to add that to your record?" The crowd gasped. For the first time, doubt flickered across his face. He glanced at Karen, waiting for her signal. But Karen's confidence had cracked. Her eyes darting wildly, and then, from the back of the hall, a firm voice cut through the chaos. "Everyone stay calm." Heads turned as Alvarez stepped inside. Uniform crisp, badge glinting under the fluorescent lights. 2 officers followed close behind him. Relief surged through me. Karen's face drained of color. "This is harassment," she sputtered. "You can't," Alvarez ignored her, stepping up to the podium. "Show me identification," he said to the fake officers. The taller one hesitated, then flashed his cheap badge. Alvarez didn't even blink. "That's not official. Driver's license." "Now," the man stammered. "We're authorized by the HOA." "No, you're not," Alvarez snapped. "I ran the plates on your cruiser. You're from a private company with no contract here. You've been trespassing and harassing homeowners. That ends tonight." The shorter officer's shoulders slumped. He muttered something under his breath, then backed away, palms raised. "I'm done. I didn't sign up for this mess." The taller one cursed under his breath, but Alvarez's backup moved in, ready to cuff him if he resisted. Karen, desperate, slammed her folder shut and clutched it to her chest. "You don't understand. I was protecting the neighborhood." Alvarez turned to her, his voice sharp. "Ma'am, you're coming with us for questioning." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Karen's eyes widened, darting from neighbor to neighbor, searching for support. But nobody stepped forward. Nobody defended her. "You can't do this," she shrieked as Alvarez guided her toward the door. "I have connections. You'll regret this." But her words rang hollow now. The curtain had been pulled back, and everyone had seen the truth as she was let out. The room buzzed, neighbors whispering, realizing how deeply they'd been fooled. Some looked ashamed, others relieved. A few even turned to me, murmuring quiet apologies. Tamara approached, her eyes shining with tears of relief. "You did it," she whispered. "You finally stopped her." I exhaled slowly, the adrenaline still coursing through me. "No," I said softly, watching the door swing shut behind Karen. "We stopped her." The days that followed felt like waking up from a nightmare. For the first time in weeks, I could walk down my street without feeling eyes burning into my back. The fake cruiser vanished overnight, the phony officers nowhere to be seen. Karen's empire had crumbled in a single evening. Word spread quickly. Alvarez's report confirmed everything. Karen had no legal standing, no approval from the HOA, and every citation she issued was fabricated. The private security company she'd hired was slapped with charges for unlawful enforcement. Their contracts frozen while investigators dug deeper. But the biggest shock came from inside the bureau. A week after the community meeting, was called back into my boss's office. He handed me a folder, his expression unreadable. For a split second, I braced for the worst. Then he cracked the faintest smile. "Turns out you were right," he said. "Internal Affairs reviewed everything. Karen's actions were illegal and unauthorized. All those complaints against you? Withdrawn. Neighbors admitted they were pressured into signing. You're cleared." Relief hit me so hard I had to sit down. Weeks of tension bled out in that moment. My career, my life was safe. "And Karen?" I asked, his smile thinned. "Facing fraud, harassment, impersonation charges. But here's the kicker, her so-called connections in the bureau? She had a relative in a high place. He resigned quietly once the scandal surfaced. Looks like she won't have much protection now." Hearing it aloud made everything click. She'd been playing a dangerous game, pulling strings, believing she was untouchable. But the truth has a way of burning through lies. Back in the neighborhood, things shifted. Neighbors who once glared at me now offered tentative smiles. Some stopped by to apologize, admitting they had fallen for Karen's intimidation. I didn't hold it against them. Fear makes people do strange things. Tamara brought over a plate of cookies one evening, her way of saying thank you. "It finally feels like home again," she said, her voice lighter than I'd ever heard it. I looked around at the quiet street, the trimmed lawns, the glow of porch lights, kids laughing in the distance. For the first time since moving in, it really did feel like home. No fake cops, no phony rules, just neighbors rebuilding trust. As I closed the door that night, I caught my reflection in the window badge glinting in my pocket. For weeks, I had felt like that badge was a weight dragging me down. Now it felt like what it always had been, a shield. Karen thought she could rewrite the rules, bend fear into power, and turn a quiet suburb into her kingdom. But kingdoms built on lies always fall, and this one fell hard.